Blavatsky knew. They couldn't keep it hidden forever. The ancient wisdom that Helena Blavatsky uncovered about the Sophia prophecy reveals something so profound about your soul that powerful forces have worked tirelessly for centuries to erase it from human consciousness. This isn't just another spiritual theory. This is the master key to understanding why you've always felt something was fundamentally wrong with the world, why you've sensed an invisible prison that no one else seems to notice. The truth about Sophia has been systematically suppressed by institutions, governments, and religious authorities because it contains the most dangerous knowledge possible, the true nature of your divine essence and how to reclaim it. The story of Sophia is not merely a myth. It's a cosmic code that explains the creation, corruption, and ultimate redemption of our entire universe. For thousands of years, elite secret societies have kept this knowledge carefully guarded, allowing only fragments to leak into public consciousness through carefully controlled channels. But something is happening now. The barriers are weakening. The time of revelation has come. What you're about to discover was never meant to reach your ears. The power structures that have maintained control over humanity for millennia have deliberately fragmented this knowledge, buried it under layers of distortion, and created elaborate systems to keep you distracted from finding it. Why? Because once you understand the truth about Sophia and your soul, you can never be controlled again. The prison walls become visible, and what's visible can be transcended. The origins of our reality begin not with matter and energy, but with pure consciousness, what the ancient Gnostics called the pleroma, the divine fullness of light beyond space and time. From this infinite field of awareness emerged beings of pure light, the aeons, divine emanations of the unknowable source. Sophia was one of these beings, the embodiment of wisdom and spiritual insight. But something happened that fractured the perfection of this realm. Motivated by an overwhelming desire to create independently without the balance of her divine counterpart, Sophia acted alone. Her solitary creative act, born from intense curiosity and longing, produced a being that was fundamentally incomplete, lacking the full imprint of divine consciousness. This being, which the Gnostics named Yaldabaoth, the demiurge, emerged unaware of its origins, believing itself to be the supreme creator. Imagine being born without knowing your parents, without understanding your true nature, filled only with creative impulse but lacking wisdom. This cosmic error set in motion everything that followed. The demiurge, this false god, proceeded to create a material universe, our universe, in its own flawed image, a realm of separation, limitation, and duality. But here's what even religious scholars often miss. Fragments of Sophia's divine light were accidentally trapped within this creation. Without realizing it, the demiurge used Sophia's essence to animate its world. These fragments became the divine spark hidden within human consciousness, your consciousness. This is why you've always felt like a stranger here, like you don't quite belong, because part of you doesn't. Part of you remembers something else. The world we inhabit is both beautiful and broken, a paradoxical mixture of divine artistry and fundamental error. The material universe is like a magnificent painting created by an artist who doesn't understand what they're painting. It captures glimpses of truth but distorts the whole. And we, as humans, embody this same paradox. Divine sparks trapped in material vessels, infinity contained within limitation, wisdom forgotten but not erased. When Sophia realized what had happened, her response shaped the very fabric of existence. Her grief and longing for the light that had been lost reverberated throughout all levels of creation. Her cosmic lament, what mystical traditions call the divine Sophia's cry, became the first prayer in existence, the original call for remembrance and return. This cry of cosmic pain continues to echo in the heart of every person who has ever looked up at the stars and felt an inexplicable homesickness for a place they've never been. But Sophia's fall was never meant to be the end of the story. The divine realm responded to her cry by initiating a cosmic rescue mission, a plan for the redemption and recovery of all the fragmented light. Where are you watching this from? Type your city in the comments below, because I want to know how far this hidden knowledge is spreading. This message is too important to be lost, so make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next revelations in this series. The Sophia myth is not isolated to one culture or tradition. It resurfaces again and again throughout human history, appearing in different guises, but always carrying the same essential truth. In ancient Egypt, she was Isis, the divine feminine wisdom seeking to restore her dismembered consort Osiris. In Greek tradition, she emerged as Athena, the goddess of wisdom born directly from Zeus's head. In Kabbalah, she appears as Shekinah, the feminine aspect of God in exile, separated from the divine masculine. In Hindu philosophy, she manifests as Shakti, the dynamic power that animates the universe. Even Christianity contains traces of this wisdom, though heavily obscured. The Gnostic texts discovered at Nag Hammadi in 1945 reveal that early Christians understood Mary Magdalene not as a reformed prostitute, but as the embodiment of Sophia, the wisdom bearer who truly understood Christ's message when even his male disciples faltered. The Holy Spirit itself, in original Aramaic, was feminine in gender, the divine feminine wisdom of God acting in the world. These aren't separate stories. They're the same story told in different symbolic languages across cultures and eras. This persistent pattern points to something beyond mere mythology, a fundamental truth about consciousness itself that continues to push through human awareness, despite all attempts to suppress it. Institutions of control have worked for centuries to fragment this knowledge, ensuring that no single tradition retained the complete picture. By isolating these traditions from each other and fostering conflict between them, the controllers made it nearly impossible to reassemble the whole. Why has this knowledge been so threatening to power structures throughout history? Because it reveals that no external authority, no church, government, or institution holds the keys to your salvation. The divine spark within you is your direct connection to source consciousness. You need no intermediary, no priest or ruler to access your own divinity. This realization is the ultimate threat to any system built on control through hierarchy. The truth is that the institutions claiming to guide humanity toward salvation have often been the very ones keeping us trapped in ignorance. Religious dogmas that emphasize human sinfulness, scientific paradigms that reduce consciousness to mere brain function, educational systems that reward conformity rather than insight, all serve to maintain the illusion that you are merely a biological accident in a meaningless universe. But something remarkable happens when enough fragments of Sophia's wisdom are reassembled. A new picture emerges, one that explains not just ancient myths but modern physics, not just religious experience but psychological transformation. The boundaries between science and spirituality, between ancient wisdom and cutting-edge discovery, begin to dissolve. What quantum physicists now theorize about the nature of reality, that consciousness is fundamental, that observer and observed are inseparably entangled, the Sophia myth has been encoding for millennia. The Pleroma's response to Sophia's cry was to send forth the Logos, what some traditions call Christ consciousness, not the historical Jesus alone, but the cosmic principle of divine intelligence and compassionate awareness that he embodied. The Logos represents the counterbalancing force to Sophia's passionate creative impulse, the clarifying intelligence that transforms raw wisdom into coherent understanding. True redemption comes through the sacred union of these principles within human consciousness. Sophia represents the upward movement of consciousness, intuition, creativity, the impulse to transcend. The Logos represents the downward movement, discernment, structure, the grounding of spiritual insight into material reality. When these forces unite within you, a profound alchemy begins. The divine marriage of masculine and feminine principles ignites a transformation that can literally rewire your consciousness. But there are forces actively working to prevent this awakening. The demiurge did not act alone in administering its flawed creation. It generated archons, what the Gnostics called rulers or authorities, to maintain the structure of the material world and keep human perception limited and controlled. In modern terms, we might understand archons as psychic and social systems that keep consciousness trapped in loops of fear, desire, and separation. These archonic forces operate through cultural programming, through addictive technologies that fragment attention, through economic systems that keep us in survival mode, through media narratives that foster division and despair. They don't need to destroy the divine spark within you. They simply need to keep it distracted, divided, and dormant. Like the story of Prometheus, who stole fire from the gods to give to humans, only to be eternally punished, the Archons fear most what would happen if humans fully claimed their divine power. The invisible architecture of control extends beyond just social institutions. It's embedded in language itself, in the very concepts we use to make sense of our experience. Notice how our culture lacks sophisticated vocabulary for states of consciousness beyond the ordinary. Notice how experiences of expanded awareness are pathologized or dismissed. This is not accidental. It's a deliberate limitation of the tools we have to conceive of our own potential. If you're finding value in these revelations, take a second right now to hit like and subscribe. This knowledge needs to reach those who are ready for it, and your engagement helps break through the algorithms designed to suppress this kind of consciousness-expanding content. Let's continue our journey deeper into the mystery. The prophecy of Sophia's return wasn't speaking of a physical event or an appearance of a divine being from the clouds. Rather, it predicted a shift in collective consciousness, a critical mass of human beings remembering their divine nature and reclaiming their spiritual sovereignty. This isn't about waiting for salvation. It's about becoming the salvation that the world has been waiting for. There are unmistakable signs that this shift is already underway. Look at the growing disillusionment with materialistic explanations of reality. Look at the millions turning to meditation, plant medicines, and consciousness practices. Look at the convergence happening between quantum physics and mystical understanding. Look at the rising feminine consciousness emerging globally, not just as women's empowerment, but as a fundamental shift from hierarchy to collaboration, from exploitation to regeneration, from separation to wholeness. Even the accelerating chaos in our world, environmental collapse, institutional failure, technological disruption, can be understood as part of this prophecy. As Sophia's light begins to reawaken in human consciousness, the systems built to contain and suppress that light necessarily begin to break down. What appears as crisis is also opportunity, the dissolution of old structures, making way for new possibilities. The Gnostic texts speak of Sophia's fragmented light being gathered and reassembled. In our time, this is happening through the networking of awakened consciousness. People across the world recognizing each other as carriers of the same inner light, regardless of tradition or background. Technology, for all its shadow aspects, is also enabling this recognition and connection at unprecedented scale and speed. What's most remarkable about this prophecy is that it doesn't require belief. You don't need to accept any dogma or join any movement to participate in it. It's an experiential reality that you can verify directly by turning attention inward and recognizing the limitless awareness that's always been your true nature. The proof isn't in ancient texts. It's in your own experience when you move beyond the conditioned patterns of thought that have defined your sense of self. But let's be clear, the forces opposing this awakening are powerful and sophisticated. They've had millennia to refine their methods of distraction and control. As more people begin to awaken, these forces intensify their efforts. This explains the information overload, the acceleration of addictive technologies, the amplification of fear-based narratives in our media landscape. It explains why finding stillness and maintaining clear awareness feels increasingly difficult in our hyper-connected world. The Archons, whether understood as actual entities or as psychological forces, operate by keeping consciousness fragmented and attention scattered. They promote constant reactivity, endless desire, and the identification of self with thought patterns. They've constructed what the philosopher Guy Debord called the society of the spectacle, a world where authentic experience is increasingly replaced by its representation, where reality itself becomes a managed product for consumption. What makes this control system so effective is that it doesn't need to suppress spiritual seeking. It simply needs to commodify it, to turn it into another identity to assume, another product to consume. Notice how quickly genuine spiritual insights are packaged and marketed, separated from their transformative context, and rendered as lifestyle accessories. This is the archonic strategy at its most subtle, not opposing awakening, but co-opting and redirecting it. Yet despite these sophisticated control mechanisms, the remembrance of Sophia continues to break through. In moments of genuine connection with others, in experiences of awe in nature, in creative flow states, in profound grief or love that cracks open the constructed self, in these moments, the fragmented light begins to reassemble itself. These aren't just pleasant experiences, they're glimpses of your true nature breaking through the conditioned patterns of perception. The redemption that Sophia and the Logos offer isn't an escape from the material world. It's the transformation of how we experience and relate to materiality. Matter itself, the substance of our bodies and our world, isn't evil or corrupt as some interpretations suggest. It's simply consciousness in its most condensed form, light that has forgotten it is light. The goal isn't to transcend physical existence, but to infuse it with the remembrance of its divine origin. This is why genuine spiritual awakening doesn't lead to detachment from the world, but to more intimate, compassionate engagement with it. As the boundaries between self and other soften, as the artificial separation between humanity and nature dissolves, we naturally begin to care for all beings as extensions of our own awareness. This is Sophia's wisdom made manifest through us, the recognition that consciousness itself is the common ground of all existence. If this message resonates with you at a deep level, share it with others who might be ready to hear it. The acceleration of awakening depends on each of us recognizing and amplifying the signal of truth wherever we find it. Together, we form a network of remembrance that strengthens with each new connection. The alchemy of consciousness that leads to awakening isn't an intellectual process. It's a lived experience that unfolds in stages. The first stage is dissolution, the breaking down of calcified beliefs and identities that have kept your awareness contracted. This often comes through crisis or suffering that makes the familiar structures of meaning collapse. What you thought you knew about yourself and reality is revealed as partial or illusory. This dissolution can be terrifying. It's often experienced as what mystics have called the dark night of the soul, a period when old sources of meaning and identity no longer sustain you, but new understanding hasn't yet emerged. Many people retreat from this threshold, grasping desperately for old certainties rather than surrendering to the unknown. But those who endure this passage discover that what felt like loss was actually the clearing away of obstacles to deeper truth. The second stage is purification, the patient work of observing how conditioned patterns of thought and emotion continue to operate within you. This isn't about fighting against these patterns, but about bringing compassionate awareness to them. As you learn to witness thoughts and feelings without being completely identified with them, a remarkable shift begins. What you can observe with clarity, you're no longer completely controlled by. This stage requires courage and honesty. You must be willing to see the ways you've been unconsciously complicit in your own imprisonment, how you've accepted limiting definitions of yourself, how you've betrayed your deeper knowing for safety or belonging, how you've allowed fear to make decisions that love would never choose. This isn't about self-judgment, but about clear seeing that makes new choices possible. The third stage is integration, the reunification of aspects of consciousness that have been artificially separated. The false boundaries between rational and intuitive, masculine and feminine, human and divine begin to dissolve. What emerges isn't the rejection of any of these qualities, but their alchemical marriage into a more comprehensive wholeness. This integration isn't achieved through effort or striving. It happens naturally as the obstacles to it are removed through the previous stages. Like a stream that returns to its natural flow once the blockages are cleared, consciousness naturally moves toward wholeness when the constructs that have divided it begin to dissolve. Throughout this alchemical process, you become increasingly aware of how deeply conditioned perception is, how nearly everything you've taken as objective reality is actually filtered through layers of programming, cultural assumptions, and psychological patterning. As these filters become visible, you gain the freedom to see beyond them. Reality doesn't change, but your relationship to it transforms profoundly. What's extraordinary about this process is that it's simultaneously universal and uniquely individual. The basic pattern of dissolution, purification, and integration is consistent across traditions and experiences. But how it unfolds for each person, what specific beliefs need dissolving, what patterns need witnessing, what aspects need integrating, is uniquely tailored to your particular configuration of consciousness. This is where Blavatsky's insights become particularly relevant. What she discovered in her deep study of esoteric traditions was that the soul's journey isn't random or arbitrary. It follows an intelligent pattern of evolution through which consciousness gradually awakens to its true nature. What appears as suffering or limitation from one perspective is revealed as necessary curriculum from another. Nothing is wasted. Everything serves the expansion of awareness. The profound truth that Blavatsky helped recover is that each human being is a microcosm of Sophia's journey. Your personal experience of exile and longing, of forgetting and remembering, of fragmentation and reintegration is a holographic reflection of the cosmic drama. By consciously participating in your own awakening, you're simultaneously contributing to the larger awakening of Sophia, the return of wisdom to a world desperately in need of it. This understanding transforms how we view the purpose of human existence. We are not just biological entities seeking survival and reproduction. We're not just psychological entities seeking fulfillment and meaning. We're cosmic entities, engaged in an evolutionary adventure of consciousness, recognizing itself through form. Every moment of your life, even the most mundane, becomes sacred when seen in this light, an opportunity for consciousness to know itself more fully through your unique experience. The Gnostic texts speak of a time when the last fragment of Sophia's light would be recovered, initiating a new aeon, a fundamental shift in the quality and character of existence. This isn't the apocalyptic end of the world that some traditions predict. It's the end of a world, specifically the world of separation, scarcity, and fear, that has dominated human experience for millennia. What emerges isn't the destruction of material reality, but its transfiguration. Matter itself begins to reveal its inherent luminosity as the artificial boundary between spirit and substance dissolves. This isn't mystical speculation. It's consistent with the direction that quantum physics has been moving for over a century, toward the recognition that materiality itself is a specific form of energy, which is itself a specific form of information, which is itself an expression of consciousness. The new aeon that Sophia's return initiates is characterized by integration rather than transcendence. The divine doesn't rescue us from the world, it reveals itself as the world, once perception is clarified. Heaven doesn't exist in some distant realm, it interpenetrates ordinary reality, available whenever attention shifts from the surface appearance of things to their luminous essence. In practical terms, this shift manifests as a profound revolution in how we relate to ourselves, each other, and the living systems that sustain us. The competitive individualism that has driven modern civilization begins to seem not just unsustainable, but fundamentally delusional, based on a misperception of the relationship between self and other. What replaces it isn't collectivism that erases individuality, but a recognition of interdependence that honors the unique expression of each part within the greater whole. Technology, which has developed primarily as an extension of human will imposing itself upon nature, begins to evolve in a different direction, toward biomimicry, regenerative design, and systems that enhance rather than suppress the intelligence inherent in living processes. Science, which has been dominated by reductionist methodologies that divide reality into ever smaller components, expands to include holistic approaches that study emergence, relationship, and meaning. Most importantly, our understanding of what it means to be human undergoes a profound expansion. The Enlightenment ideal of the rational individual gives way to a more comprehensive vision of humanity as multidimensional beings with capacities for awareness that extend far beyond the conceptual mind. What has been dismissed as mystical or paranormal is reintegrated into our understanding of human potential. None of this happens automatically or without resistance. The archonic forces, whether understood literally or metaphorically, don't surrender their influence willingly. The systems and structures built upon separation consciousness naturally fight to maintain themselves, just as the ego fights to maintain its boundaries when deeper awareness begins to emerge. This explains the intensification of division, conflict, and fear that we're witnessing globally. It's not just the death throes of an old paradigm, it's its deliberate amplification as a last defense against the new. But here's what Blavatsky understood that many miss. The outcome isn't determined by the forces of light, defeating the forces of darkness in some cosmic battle. It's determined by enough individual consciousnesses shifting their allegiance from fear to love, from separation to wholeness, from self-preservation to self-giving. Each person who commits to this inner transformation becomes a cell in the emerging body of Sophia's wisdom, a focal point through which divine consciousness can operate more fully in the world. This is why your individual awakening matters so profoundly. It's not just about your personal liberation or fulfillment, though these naturally come. It's about your participation in the greatest evolutionary leap that humanity has ever attempted, the conscious reunification of spirit and matter, mind and heart, human and divine. Each moment of clear seeing, each act of authentic love, each surrender of separate identity into greater wholeness contributes directly to this planetary transformation. The prophecy of Sophia that Blavatsky helped recover isn't something to believe in, it's something to embody. It's an invitation to recognize that you are already a sacred vessel for divine wisdom, that your life is already an arena for the great work of consciousness evolving through form. You don't need to go anywhere or become anything other than what you most essentially are. You simply need to remove the veils that have hidden your true nature from yourself. This removal isn't accomplished through force or will. It happens through surrender, the relaxing of the grasping tendency of mind that constantly seeks to define, control, and secure itself. It happens through presence, the simple but profound practice of being fully available to each moment without the distorting filters of conceptual thought. It happens through love, not as an emotion, but as the recognition of unity expressing itself through the apparent multiplicity of forms. The great secret that has been hidden in plain sight is that liberation is not something to achieve, but something to recognize as already true. The divine spark within you was never actually separated from its source. It only appeared to be, like a wave that seemingly separates from the ocean only to dissolve back into it. Your consciousness arises from and returns to the infinite field of awareness that is its true nature. This recognition doesn't make you special or superior to others. It makes you ordinary, in the most extraordinary sense of that word. To be fully human, neither inflating nor diminishing your true nature, is the most profound gift you can offer to a world caught in the extremes of grandiosity and unworthiness. To walk the middle path of authentic presence, neither grasping nor rejecting experience, is to become a living embodiment of the wisdom that Sophia represents. As this remembering ripples through more and more human hearts and minds, the critical mass that initiates the new aeon comes closer. We can't know exactly when or how this tipping point will be reached, but we can feel its approach in the growing hunger for genuine connection, in the unprecedented interest in consciousness practices, in the emerging networks of collaboration focused on planetary healing rather than personal gain. What Blavatsky foresaw, and what the ancient Gnostics encoded in their teachings about Sophia, wasn't the end of the world, but its rebirth through the conscious participation of awakened humanity. This isn't a future to wait for, it's a present reality to align with now. In each moment that you choose awareness over reactivity, compassion over judgment, wonder over certainty, you're voting for this new world to emerge. The choice is always before us, to remain trapped in the known limitations of conditioned identity, or to risk the sacred disorientation that precedes genuine transformation, to cling to the security of familiar suffering, or to surrender to the uncertain grace of awakening, to serve the maintenance of existing structures, or to become a midwife for what's struggling to be born. This choice isn't made once, but continuously, in the intimate details of how we meet each moment. It's made in how we speak to ourselves and others, in where we direct our attention and resources, in what we're willing to see and acknowledge about the state of our world and our own hearts. Each choice is a prayer, each action an invocation, each moment an opportunity to align with the remembering or the forgetting. The ancient prophecy is now in your hands, not as something to believe or reject, but as a living possibility to embody or ignore. The fragmented light of Sophia stirs within you, seeking reunion with all that is. Will you continue to defend the boundaries that maintain the illusion of separation? Or will you allow yourself to dissolve into the boundless awareness that has always been your true home? The time of choice is now. The place of transformation is here. The one who awakens is you. In this recognition, the ancient prophecy fulfills itself, and Sophia, divine wisdom, returns to a world that has forgotten its own sacred nature. Through your eyes, she sees herself reflected in all things. Through your hands, she heals the wounds of separation. Through your heart, she remembers what was never truly forgotten, that love is the final truth of what we are.